The After the Affair podcast with me, Luke Shillings, is here to help you process, decide, and move forward on purpose following infidelity. Together, we'll explore what's required to rebuild trust not only in yourself, but also with others. Whether you stay or leave, I can help. And no matter what your story, there will be something here for you. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the After the Affair podcast, episode number 36 with myself, Luke Shillings. This week I'm being joined by Tamika Carlton. Tamika is a relationship coach and avid traveller who believes in the power of forging meaningful connections. She's the creator of an inclusive relationship company, Couples Experience, that hosts luxury couples retreats. She has been featured on the Oprah Winfrey Show, Authority Magazine, Her Forward, and other high-profile media outlets. With couples, her goal is to create a space of comfort and transparency so they can share their stories and recognise their love. Massive shifts have come from her kind-hearted yet direct communication method, and I can't wait to find out much more in today's conversation. So let's jump straight into it. Okay, Tamika, thank you for joining us today on the After the Affair podcast. I've been really looking forward to talking to you. So from what I understand, you are a relationship coach, but you also specialize in couples retreats and bringing people together at various stages of their relationship.
Absolutely.
I'll definitely be interested to talk as to what stage the majority of the people do tend to take that journey. As in, is it always after there's been problems within the relationship, or is it something that people would try and approach proactively, let's say?
Yeah.
So if you'd like to introduce yourself and
of course.
Let us know all the things.
Yeah, works for me. I'm Tamika Carlton. I am a relationship coach and CEO and founder of Couples Experience, which is an inclusive relationship company that hosts couples retreats in several different areas internationally and in the States. And then we also have tons of just relationship resources, because ultimately one of the main reasons why I founded Couples Experience was because when my husband and I got together in 2016, it was like we were going through our issues, and a lot of times people think, oh, it's a fresh relationship, it's all this amazingness going on, but we were having like real situations that people probably would have been surprised to know about. And a lot of it was like, who do you communicate and connect with, right? How do you connect about these relationship struggles that you're having without having like the shame and all of those things? And one of the things that I suggested, and my husband and I had a conversation, and I was like, we need to create that space, right? We need to create that space where people feel like they can be transparent and open about their relationship issues, their relationship highs and lows, and really grow from that. And over time, one of the main priorities for me too was just doing a lot of research and data analysis, especially coming from a marketing background. That was like all my thing. But really just understanding that relationships is how we reach happiness. And surprisingly, in the States, there's only 14% of people that report being happy. And now I'm on a true mission to ensure that we increase that stat and just really focus on having quality relationships. So yeah, that's a long-winded version of what I do.
No, not at all, not at all. So what do you think it is that would define happiness in a relationship?
That is a great question. I think it's comfortability and contentment and knowing that you can be who you truly are in a relationship. Over time, being a relationship coach and just surrounding myself with a diverse array of relationships and individuals, a lot of people just are not happy because they feel like they're hiding so many things from their partner, right? And I think the main way to get to a sustainable state of happiness, whether it's through couples relationships, friendships, business partnerships, whatever it is, it's when you really are able to bring your full self to the situation. And that's what the couples retreats are all about. And just Couples Experience as a whole is encouraging people to be open to who they are and sharing that and all of the things that they want to present and figuring out if that relationship is fitting for that.
some of the things that I see quite often with my own clients and the people that I work with is the traits of people pleasing, and
Yes,
this nature in which where one person is trying to, meet the needs of the other, but they're usually through their own expectations and not the other person's expectations anyway. And then, of course, this is also happening on the other side. So you have these two people living these like almost artificial lives of what they believe the other person wants and vice
for
versa.
sure.
And then ultimately actually being victim to themselves and not even the other partner, just by the way they're interpreting it. So when somebody comes to you and they're at this point in their relationship where things, maybe communication hasn't been great, or there's been some awareness. I mean, actually, first to that, actually. So, what are the common stages in which people are coming on the retreats and coming to you?
Yeah, I would say from a retreat perspective, it's more people that are either really happy or feeling really happy in the relationship. And they're like, we just want to experience more and experience fresh new things to continue to break down more barriers in the relationship. So there's like the fresh, loving, like we're hyped up in the relationship. And then, there's a really good smaller percentage that is not even a smaller percentage, just about 30% of people that come to the retreats are struggling, right? And they either someone has cheated or they're just at this standstill where they feel like their relationship has become really stagnant and they're just not pleased, right? And so it really varies. And I like to put people together that are in different phases of their relationship, because a lot of time that's how enlightenment occurs, and people kind of see themselves at a different phase and all of those things, and it works together to get people to a different space. So
how would a couple know? I'm thinking back to probably some earlier stages in my life and like friends that I've seen in other people's relationships where maybe the relationship hasn't been going perfectly. Maybe they've been together a few years, and then these common societal solutions of, well, let's get married. That'll fix it. Or let's have a baby.
Do it for
let's
sure.
have a baby. You can't even divorce from a baby. And,
right. That's not going to do it. Okay.
No. Exactly. And I'm just thinking, like, from the perspective of, let's say they were somebody, a couple were looking to try and solve some problem, but and they were thinking of things like marriage and children, or maybe they've even had all of those things and they're looking for the next thing. My gut is saying that wouldn't be the perfect time to be coming on something like this, or would you disagree?
I mean, listen, no, I disagree, only because, I think the best part about the retreats and just being in relationship in general is whenever one party feels like there's something there, they may not be able to articulate what that is yet. Whenever there is a feeling of, I'm just not 100%, right? I'm not 100% invested in this relationship. I'm not 100% feeling comfortable in this relationship, whatever it is, like that is the perfect time to go on a retreat, right? Because whatever you're experiencing, it's going to like build up continuously in your own life. And a retreat is just going to almost force it to come up in a space where you can be nurtured and you can be kind of coached in the moment and progress to whatever state you need to get to. So
okay, yeah, no, I can understand that, and I can see how that can work, because I suppose, unlike the scenarios I was describing before, you're doing that independently, still within the enclosed minds of the two people within that relationship. There's no external factors at play in terms of guidance and safe spaces and boundaries.
Sure. And I think sometimes, and not to cut you off, but sometimes I always think a lot of couples are in this phase at home, and this goes for individuals as a whole too. Like just recently, like I was like trying to think of a new business idea and I got stuck because you're in the same situation on a daily basis. And I removed myself from, my daily routine, and then I was re-inspired. And I think a lot of times when you're in a relationship, that's the same thing. You're in this daily routine that sometimes becomes very monotonous, and you just can't see the possibilities, right? But when you're outside of, whether it's your comfort zone or whether it's just in a different experience, something is able to be shifted. And, with the retreats, for us, you can either do individual coaching, you don't have to do coaching, you can do couples coaching, or you can just have really good, solid conversations with the other couples on the retreat. And I think a lot of times, a lot of breakthroughs happen through that, because another thing, like I said at the beginning of the conversation, is just that being in a relationship, most people don't have conversations about what they're thinking or experiencing, whether it's with their partner or their friends or their family, whomever. And a lot of times when you do it, you're getting judged, right? Like people are like, well, you should, someone always has their own insight or advisement. And in this space, and just hopefully in multiple other spaces, you are in a place where you can tell your story, people will listen, and people will relate, right? And they will just be. And a lot of times they'll share insights, but it seems more valuable when it's coming from people that are in the same predicament or just investing in their relationship as a whole by going to this couples retreat, right? So, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. I have quite a few people reach out to me, and even the clients, I work with my clients one-to-one, and I sometimes work with the betrayed, sometimes the unfaithful, both male and female. But I do often get requests for couples, like as in like, but often when we usually have a conversation at that point, and that conversation usually comes to a point where we're trying to clarify what are the motivations behind wanting the other partner to come in. And certainly at this stage in all of those conversations that I've had, it's always ended up being that, well, if my partner does the work, then that will fix the problem.
Right.
And of course, I'm coaching people one-to-one, and so freeing them of that, expectation for the other person to show up in a specific way for things to be okay. So you have much more experience than me with the couples type scenario. I'd just be interested to see whether you've seen those kind of patterns and where that diverges and how you overcome those things.
Yeah, I think more than it, as you stated, like a lot of times it's easy to blame, or it's easy to say that, there's always an if factor there, like if only, or I wish that they would do, or whatever. And a lot of it is, one, why is, having the conversations with two people is, why is it that you need those things? Number one, figuring out that, because a lot of times it has nothing to do with the other person, why you need those things. And that discovery alone can help people to have a clearer understanding of why they feel that way, and have the other partner will have a better understanding to at least have some type of empathy if you're in that predicament and that place where you can feel the empathy. Sometimes you're bypass that, you know what I mean? Yes. But a lot of times it really is just clearly breaking down the why and the intention behind every action that is needed or required. And I think more than anything, when you come together as a couple in couples coaching, it is more about having a third party that can kind of, filter through the thoughts, of course, and then really kind of allow both individuals to have their moment to shine and speak and express. Because realistically, when you're in a place, even if you're in a decent place in a relationship, sometimes you're just not hearing one another, or you're hearing one another in the way that you typically receive information. You're not totally listening and absorbing. So I think that, just being able to read back or disclose back what you're listening or what you hear is very valuable in those situations too.
Do you find people often seeking validation?
Oh, for sure. And I think, naturally as humans, that's what we need, right? That is just a necessity of who we are. And a lot of times it's the simplest of validation, like, but haven't you noticed that I've been taking the trash out? Like, and it's like those small things are easily ignored and easily forgotten. And those are the things that really matter the most to people, and those are the things. And a lot of times, once again, like the love languages, you mentioned just how people love or receive things in their way versus how the other person needs to perceive or receive it. It's just so interesting always to see how the smallest of things, that small appreciation or showing the smallest of appreciation for the smallest of things, go a very, very long way.
It's so true. And I think even just things like activities like taking the trash out, let's say, and it seems so innocent, so harmless. You don't really think about it in the context of a relationship unless you're a relationship coach, and it's an analogy that comes up quite often, of course. But the point being that if you're at a point in your relationship where you're seeing your partner in a particular way, it's almost like you have, I'll often describe it as having a filter on, or almost like a shaded pair of glasses, and it means that everything appears with that tint of green or blue or whatever it is that they're looking at. So it doesn't really matter what they do or how they do it. It's already prejudged as being or prefaced as being wrong, or and it doesn't matter how. So even if they do take the trash out, they're not doing it right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a no-win situation.
It really is.
However, being able to shift that, and it doesn't take much, when you focus on the positive sides, and all of a sudden you start filling that. I often describe it as having like a pot of which you can fill with evidence of things to support the good things that your partner's doing, and the connection and the trust and all of the things. And actually, it doesn't take that long when you start looking to find those things.
But it's like when you're in a place where you are not paying attention to those things, and the other person knows that you're not paying attention to those things, those small things can cause such a degree of deterioration in a relationship that just can last for a long time, obviously. And those are the things that, it's not always the cause for breakups or affairs or whatever, but those are some of the key elements that drive people to, away from one another. It drives massive wedges between people. And I think that, it's almost like it's so easy to get engrossed in our daily lives of like these other things that we have to invest our time in. And the most valuable times are those little moments that people are putting investments in the other person. Because even with me, like, being in a marriage, and, we all make mistakes, and I'm sometimes not paying attention either. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I'm not perfect. And a lot of times it is the smallest things. Like my husband will be like, but did you see this though? And I'm like, well, no, like, but once someone kind of calls it out and you're like, okay, and a lot of times you're like, but did you see that I did this for you?
Yes.
You're like, but I need the validation first before I give it to you.
My partner would be loving this.
Right? It's like this is the key in relationships. But it's one of those things that once I started really acknowledging those things, I realized that those things were his way of showing his love too, and that is how you can't replace those things. And I think that we just have to pay attention to the small things and acknowledge and appreciate and find the things that they are showing us. They may be showing up for you in ways that you may not necessarily need. And of course, you have to cross that barrier of like, love me the way that I need to be loved. But it's also important to ensure that you recognize that the person is showing you love,
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And that element of perfection, when many people experience a desire for control, humans by nature want to control things, or at least most people do. And it's not uncommon to link a desire for control with perfectionism, or at least evidence of it. I know it's certainly something I've been guilty of throughout my life. And even though I've been able to let a lot of that go, and I've been able to approach things from a very different perspective, there is still that point where obviously you can't be perfect all the time. Right. And when you start to, well, obviously, I mean, actually, that is the point. You can't be perfect.
No.
In fact, anything, it's not even, what even is perfect, I suppose, is probably the better question. But
when it comes to people are learning these skills, they're learning to take responsibility for themselves. They're learning to recognize and view their partner through a different lens, let's say, through a different perspective. And they get to a point where it feels like they know what they should be doing now. It's like, okay, well, I know that I should be looking at it from this perspective, or maybe I should just be looking at it from his point of view. But then comes a point where, just like you described, and I'm definitely guilty of it, you miss it. And it's not until you actually, later on that evening and you're thinking, it's gone now. And I think that's really important to recognize. I live and breathe everything that we're talking about, and I know you do too.
Yes.
And we're both in relationships, and we both still have all the same problems.
All the same things. Yes.
The difference for me, at least, is that they don't compound over time anymore.
Yes. Correct. And that takes a lot of maturity, emotional maturity. And that does not happen overnight. Okay.
No. Agreed.
And I think that's another thing. Like, you have to have, like, I always tell people, when I first got into this relationship, like, I had been in previous relationships. Obviously, they never, not obviously, but they did not get to marriage. We got married. And I just remember early on in the relationship, and one of the reasons why I got into relationship coaching, by the way, is I was the person that when we would get into an argument, like, I would just walk away. Like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want this situation. Like, I don't have time for this. And there was a point where Logan was like, no, you can't leave. Like, you can't walk away. And I was like, yeah, I can't. But you see, there was the point is that I had to grow from that. Yes. That is not how you achieve a lasting, positive, fruitful relationship, right? And so there are moments where I'm like, okay, I still want to kind of walk away or you get frustrated or whatever it may be. But in those moments, you have to remember, what is your intention for this relationship? Do you want this relationship to continue? Do you want it to be a fruitful relationship? Do you want to have your best friend in this situation? Do you want to continue to grow in your intimacy? And if any of those questions are a yes, and everyone has their own intention, and you should be clear in what that is, because in my world, whatever you intend, you will create. And if whatever your intention is, you have to acknowledge it in that moment and go into yourself and say, I can't act like I used to act, basically. And, that's what we do all the time. And that's what I tell clients all the time. It's like, you will consistently grow and evolve in this relationship, and you have to figure out how you can continue to grow together.
Yes. Yeah. You alluded earlier on at the beginning that, obviously, once you'd got into your current relationship, that there was some, I forget exactly how you worded it. Maybe you could read
struggles,
but quite early on.
Yes.
So
yes.
yeah. So if you're prepared to share a little bit more info about that, and then what it was that tipped the balance, what was it that changed the trajectory?
Yeah, great question. I think, one, it was the situation where I always wanted to leave just because of arguments. And B, we got into a relationship really quickly, and like, it was amazing at first. Like, we dated and it was great. And we moved in together really quickly. And like, we were getting to know one another really well, promptly. And, there were situations with, like, most of it external, whether it be like friends or like friends having comments, and like us having to get to a point where we were like, this is you and I, and forget the external things. And I think most of relationships early on, it typically is external elements that are kind of infiltrating. And I think more than anything, the way that we got through it was really having to hash out and communicate. And when you communicate, you have to communicate. Sure, we went through the phases of communication. It's like frustration. Then we went to, let's hear one another out, and then solving it. But we had to go through that and we had to experience it in a real way for us to get to the other side. And, that is how we continue to be. We continue to communicate when things are struggling, like we're going through struggles,
So I'm thinking, because you're right, communication is the crux of, well, all human interaction, I suppose,
Sure.
both literally and in pretty much every sense possible.
Yep.
You mentioned earlier the differing in terms of, for example, you were saying how you like to just walk away, let's say.
Yes.
Now, maybe part of that was it. You just wanted to close the door, and that was that conversation done with. And but there's a stage beyond that, of which I see many people experience within sort of an intercouple relationship, whereby one partner wants to deal with the situation there and then. So that's me, by the way.
Yes.
I'm the person. My brain's active. It's like I'm feeling all the feelings. I'm not afraid to discuss them. I'm not afraid to explore it. I want to resolve. I'm like a problem solver.
So I would be running away from you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And of course, if you and I were in a relationship like that,
Yes.
I would be getting frustrated because you're running away. You're getting frustrated because I'm chasing.
Exactly.
And we're literally, at loggerheads. So how do we help people
compromise
who are in that situation?
Yes. No, you're right. Yeah. That is the realest relationship struggle in the world. Is 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be with someone that is like you. And if you are not going to be able to, for me, this is what you may have, significant similarities. You may have values in common, but like true personality types, no, you're not going to be the same, which is not even an interesting relationship for me. So okay. I would say that when you have that, a lot of people want to run from that because they think this is not how a relationship is supposed to be. And that's not true. The truth is that a real quality relationship is supposed to not pressure, but it's supposed to kind of elevate you beyond what you're accustomed to doing, right? So like, in your case, or even in my husband's case, he had to get to a point where he had to understand that although like I may sit here and have a conversation with you about this, I really don't want to, and B, and B, and B, when I'm having this conversation, you have to understand, especially earlier on, that the things that I say, and typically I'm very adamant about, being consciously aware of what the words that I speak and all of those things. But sometimes in those moments, the words that I say may not be very what you really want to hear and the way that you want to hear it. So you're going to have to compromise and have a better understanding of that, right? Absolutely. Same with me is, okay, I have to compromise and sit here, although I don't want to, and really learn how to express myself better in this place where I don't want to be, so that we can get to a resolution. So it really is like everyone is coming together with a better understanding of who they are and who the other person is, and that it may not be immediately a fruitful situation like in year 1, year 2, year 3, but please believe if you continue to invest in that mode of whatever you're in that's uncomfortable, it's going to be worthwhile in the end.
Yes. So I want to question you on something, because
yes,
I've just recorded a podcast episode that hasn't actually come out yet, but it will have aired by the time that this episode.
Nice, perfect timing.
Yes, and I'm talking about compromise, and because I think, as you describe it, and I think many people see it the same way, when you're in any kind of difference between people, you have one person who is right. And one person who is wrong.
Let's be clear.
Let's just clarify. But either way, it doesn't really matter. The point is, you're at like polar opposites in terms of where you are. And for anybody who can't see my hands, which is everybody, by the way, I have one right up at the top of the screen and one at the bottom. So right. One person's essentially like at 100, let's say, and the other person's at 0. And then the logic is that compromise makes sense, meet in the middle ground, all these kinds of this terminology, this language. But then what that does, that brings one person up and it brings the other person down, and they both meet at this hypothetical 50-50. The problem is And so I'd like your take on this, but
Yep.
and this is what I discussed. But the problem is that 50 at 50 is still 100. So it's actually a zero-sum game. You've made no forward progress by compromise. Plus, it also means that because to compromise, almost by definition, is for basically, so in the dynamic that you and I were talking about just a moment ago, it's a little bit like saying, I'm going to have to be in a little bit of pain to remain in this relationship. And you're going to have to be in a little bit of pain to remain in this relationship. And that's ultimately what compromise looks like to me. Now, I believe that that's not necessary. I believe there's ways in which we can utilize the strengths, the opinions, the ideas, the feelings, and the thinking of both parties to work together.
I agree.
To aim above 100. So
I agree.
Yeah, I'd just be interested to know what your take on compromise is.
I think that's,
when I describe it that way.
I love that description, and I think that, you know, the thing that resonated with me the most is the balance piece, right? And then the piece that when you meet in the middle, like both, it's actually not really like what you truly, it's not really meeting in the middle.
I mean, it's a great first step.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Like,
and I'm not saying it's not, I'm not saying you shouldn't compromise.
You've made progress, right? But I think, and what really resonated with me was the piece about, you know, I'm going to be in pain and you're going to be in pain. And that to me is not, that's not the desire of anyone, right? To be in pain for any situation. I think that compromise for me is having an understanding that your needs are not always going to be the priority.
Agreed.
And I think that like, I'm all about self-care and ensuring that like you are, you know, the focus, and like you have to ensure that you're good before you can offer anything to anyone else, right? That's very powerful and true. But at the end of the day, relationships kind of encourage us to make sure that we can care and connect with someone else outside of all of our needs, right? And I think compromise is a key element, and you not sacrificing you, but knowing that, like I said, having an understanding and knowing that your barriers are being broken to evolve. Like, yes. And that's really all. I think, you know, I always have this conversation with my friends that, you know, Logan and I have a lot of things in common. We have amazing conversations, and like, we have a lot of opinions that just do not match up a lot of times, right? And we have gotten into heated discussions over these opinions. And we have been like, how did this match even occur? Because of some of these opinions, right? And the thing is that when we have clear discussions and we allow ourselves to listen and compromise, because that's really what compromise is too, is listening, over time, our opinions have shifted to be more complementary to one another, right? Which is very fascinating to me, because
it's very fascinating,
right?
Yeah.
Like 2 years ago, if you would have told me that I would believe or agree with Logan on certain topics, I would be like, yeah, right. But the point is that, you know, that compromise and that listening and that communication and the combination of all of that has allowed us to break down our barriers to grow and evolve and become more of who we are really supposed to be, right? So I think that the pain points should just be more about understanding that this is just growth. It's just growth.
Yeah,
it's growth.
Yeah. So when people have, the next question I've got is regarding after somebody has been to a retreat. You know, it's a bit like I suppose it's in some respects not just. I mean, how long are these?
Typically 5 to 7 days.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So very intense, but I suppose on the grand scheme of things, relatively short period of time.
Super fun though. There's some fun in there too.
They sound amazing. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not doubting that at all. What I'm interested in, and particularly because you'd already spoken about data and something you're really interested in, I know for a fact that you will track the progress of people beyond their stage.
Oh, for sure.
So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So once someone goes on a retreat, like, first of all, they have the option to reconnect with us, and we always follow up. I do one-on-ones, and then we have additional resources that we provide and all of that. But as far as like relationship status, typically, and this is data analysis too, 7 out of 10 people that go on retreats feel that they are now able to be more talkative. They feel more connected, all of those things. And the majority of the reviews, I would probably say 8 out of 10 of the reviews feel like our retreaters say that is exactly what occurred, and they feel more confident in their communication. They feel more connected to one another, and they feel like their relationship has taken, a step up. There have been reality checks on these couple retreats for people, and in some instances, a couple of relationships have ended. And I think that's obviously not the goal, but my goal is always to ensure that people are doing what's best for them. And I think, just once again, allowing them to be in a space where they can have a solid realization and feel comfortable in that. And a lot of times those individuals that do decide to no longer be in a relationship, they both walk away feeling comfortable versus being frustrated about it. So
the first thing that I work with my clients with, it's given, most people approach me any point from a few days after they've read a text message on somebody's on their partner's phone, to in some cases a couple of decades or more. It can really extend. But the first thing that we really focus on is getting clear on what they actually want, in terms of whether they even want to be in this relationship. Because often it's the memory or this imagined identity of what I looked like in that relationship that I'm trying to get back to. People always say, I just want things to go back to the way they were. But then when we start unpeeling that, it's like, no, I really don't want to go back. No. That's definitely not what I want, because I now see all of the bits that weren't right, or the bits that I could have done something different. And this doesn't matter whether on which side of the betrayal fence you fall. It applies to both partners. And I think I can totally understand how that would be true in your situation as well, where people sometimes they are in that environment, they really do start to get an understanding of each other, but also a better understanding of themselves. And then it's like, hang on, actually, this person isn't the right person for me.
Not
and that's okay.
And that's why I think it's good to go like on vacations or retreats or whatever it may be with other couples, and especially other couples in different phases of the relationship, whether it's early, they've been together for 20 years, 15 years, whatever. And you may lie at the 5-year mark or whatever it may be, but not necessarily comparing, but just seeing and remembering either, I remember when we used to be like this, and we can like be more fun. So let's like invest in being more fun. Or we should be this way more, or whatever it may be. And I think just being able to kind of relate to different phases and different types of relationships is very fruitful for people. And I think that it is, like I said, a reality check. Like, they look so happy. We are not. You know what I mean? So it's like, either can we get there, or no, we're not going to get there ever again. And that is, like you said, that is okay. Like, it's okay. If I just always feel that people should make the effort if they are comfortable with doing so, and making that effort really makes a difference too, for you to walk away or whatever it may be.
And I think I'd be interested, what sort of age range?
Oh man, it spans the gamut. I would say anywhere from like 28 to about 55. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's not that dissimilar. Mine's probably a little bit, I'm probably seeing people more late 30s to mid 50s is sort of that sort of window, I would say. And I'm thinking from like the perspective of myself, when I was in my 20s, there's these like unwritten societal expectations.
I know.
Of, find a partner,
I
get
know.
married, have kids,
I know.
buy a house, do all the things.
Right.
And then you get to the point where you've got all of those things, and you don't feel fulfilled in the way that
exactly.
maybe
You're
you
still
thought
like,
you
okay,
would.
what's next?
What's next? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you get to your sort of your 40s and then maybe your 50s, and it's like, and you're either in that same relationship or maybe you've moved on to a different relationship, and it's like, what? There's no instructions for now. I don't know what is
going on.
Yeah. So it's like, on the one hand, I'm like, I'm frustrated that
right.
I've sort of complied with this societal expectation.
Right.
However, at least I knew what to do. Now it's like, now what? Now I don't know what to do anymore.
Seriously. Well, and that's why it's so good. Like, I love relationships, like, honestly, because I'm data analysis, and the 14% of people are unhappy. This is American data, by the way.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, quality relationships really do have the finesse and the ability to not make you, but they help you to be happier, right? And I think that just knowing how to invest in relationships and the correct types of relationships, and ensuring that what you're doing and while you're investing is like fun and enjoyable, because all of the external stuff it can't last, it's not going to last. And like, we had a reality check and a health scare recently, and that really forced me to be like, all I care about, like, in the grand scheme of thing, like being in the hospital, it's like, I didn't care about work. I didn't care about what I wanted to eat because I didn't eat. I didn't care about how I looked. All I care about was my partner. And I think there's so much value in having those types of relationships, whether it's friendships or colleagues or, your lover, whomever, just knowing that that person is going to be there, and vice versa, and investing in the correct relationship. And if you don't want to be in a relationship anymore, like, let it go. Because I always tell people, if I don't want to be there if you're sick, and you don't want to be there if I'm sick, then this ain't gonna work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Hospitals I find them fascinating. I was actually in hospital myself quite seriously for about 5 weeks, about 18 months ago. And one of the things that I was reminded of, I was on several wards, and I met lots of people who were in the hospital at the same time from every background imaginable. It's such a, of course, nobody wants to be in hospital. Of course. Usually the reasons aren't usually positive.
Right.
But it's such a leveler. It's such a, I suppose, a reality check in a lot of ways, that actually all of a sudden, all of these superficial things that we've been chasing all our life, all of these things that we think will make us happy, they just don't matter anymore. Because really all that does matter is relationships. It just matters. It's that connection between you and another human being.
Yes, it is so true. And it's just a resounding, like, powerful thing to be a part of. And it's frustrating that you have to go through crazy things in the world to get to that place, or to be reminded. But it is a level playing field when it comes to health and life and death. It just is. And you're absolutely right. Like, the relationships are invaluable. Like, the love and the connection is just, that's it. That is it.
Exactly. Well, that's a beautiful place to draw it to a close, Tamika. So thank you ever so much again for being here with us today and sharing your wonderful knowledge and experience. So for our listeners, how can people get hold of you? What tell me all the things.
Of course.
I'll include everything in the show notes as well, of course.
Perfect. Yes, of course. Thank you for having me. For starters, this was a wonderful conversation. I want to come back. No, I'm kidding. But yes, I love it.
Get me one of these retreats. I'm sure we can work something out.
Seriously, absolutely. But yes, everyone can reach out to me, couplesexperience.com, and then my Instagram, Tamika_Carlton JBP. And looking forward to it. I do one-on-one coaching, retreats, all of the things relationship-based, and would love to chat.
Perfect. Absolutely amazing. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a great year.
You too.
Well, I hope that you found that conversation with me and Tamika as useful and as entertaining as I did. I think the important takeaway for me is that when you're going through a difficult period within your relationship, you can often feel so isolated. It can feel like there's no hope, that there's no way to make that step forward to try and rebuild that connection, or maybe even to have success in a future relationship. But like with the couples retreats that Tamika has been speaking about today, this is one of so many ways in which you can rebuild connection with your partner. It's one of so many ways that you can start to reignite that thing that perhaps has faded in your relationship. But remember that hope will only get you so far. It still requires intention. It still requires you to do things on purpose to help rebuild those connections and to really try and strengthen that relationship to a level that perhaps maybe you didn't even realize. I'd really like to thank you once again for listening, and I can't wait to speak to you again next week. Take care.